Let's get some analysis as international affairs analyst Okemfe Liberty joins me live from New York via Zoom. Good to have you join us, Okemfe.
Thank you. Good to have you. Thanks for having me.
So let's begin with the latest. Just a few minutes ago, we had a press briefing by Jens Stoltenberg, who is the Secretary General of NATO. Now, he re-emphasized why there cannot be foreign boots on the ground in Ukraine. According to him, which is the same sentiment by a lot of people, that look, if that happens, this could become a full-blown war and result to the World War III. But, you know, as Russia continues to be brutal in terms of its tactics on Ukraine, there is now an argument or a debate amongst analysts who are wondering, should there be deterrence by presence, which is NATO, or deterrence by defense? And I just want to get your thought on that. Do you think it's time for NATO to move just beyond being present to now defending?
Well, first of all, I think let me do say that our hearts and prayers goes out to the people of Ukraine. What is going on out there right now is just so unnecessary. And I think, by the way, let's not kid ourselves. What Putin is trying to do is shape the world in the image where the Soviet Union once was, bringing together the entire USSR. Those days are long gone. You know, we have to look towards the future. But at the same time, if you have people who are world leaders whose entire thinking and worldview and calculation is based on the relic of the 19th and 20th century, it's difficult for the world to move forward. And as you rightly mentioned, NATO for now is in essence limited in what it can do without necessarily causing World War III. And as we all know, Ukraine is not a member of NATO. In fact, they're not even a member of the European Union. I think for now, the sanctions, I believe, are working. You know, the Western nations at some point do have to make a decision. They do have to make an analysis in terms of what they think is good for their economy and what is good for their people, and thinking about what sort of additional defense should they provide to the people of Ukraine. There's been a lot of talk in terms of closing of the airspace and whatnot. When you close the airspace, that's tantamount to a declaration of war against the Russians. And so there's a lot of conversation that is currently ongoing within NATO, and I think that's one of the things that they have to figure out. I understand that the French president had almost a 90-minute conversation with Vladimir Putin the other day. You know, again, there was limited progress in terms of what they spoke about. I believe they are still very much far apart. And they are far apart partly because Putin's agenda is totally different from the other Western countries. And I think it's definitely going to take a long time before they have some sort of a reconciliation.
And I want to ask you about those talks because Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelenskiy has now said the one-on-one talk with President Putin is the only way out of this crisis. But the former president, Petro Poroshenko, has cast doubt over the viability of any talk with President Putin. He says President Putin cannot be trusted. When you look at when you hear statement from President Putin saying everything is going as planned in Ukraine, do you think that the end to this war is talks with President Putin? How far do you think talks would go?
Well, at some point, they do have to talk. There is ongoing diplomatic solutions. There's ongoing diplomatic conversations, whether it be between some of the NATO allies or between the French and whatnot. Listen, it starts with a conversation. War is certainly not the answer. Of course, there are limited progress in terms of some of the conversations that is ongoing, but yes, they may not necessarily trust Putin, but I think at this point in time, they potentially have no choice but to sit down and talk.
And we also understand that the G7 and EU foreign ministers will be meeting today. The Ukrainian foreign minister will join virtually. Now, all of this is to reconsider, to assess some of the sanctions and how far they are working and what more can be done as the world continues to look for how to isolate Russia. And that's my question. How far do you think the isolation would go? How far do you think it will work, especially with the sanctions, when you look at the fact that China it seems to be backing Russia in terms of economic buffering for Russia?
I think at some point the European Union and the European nations have to make a serious decision. The EU is largely dependent on Russian energy, for their survival as well. And so that's why you see a situation where there are incremental sanctions that is being levied upon Russia. But again, at some point they have to come to a general realization and say, look, what do we really want? How far are they willing to go? There's been a lot of talk with regards to having some sort of a swift sanction with regards to the economy. Even when they put that sanction in place, my understanding was that the suit only affected 3 banks in Russia out of 300. So let them meet, and as we recall, Russia was formerly a part of the G7 until he was kicked out by Obama after he took over Crimea. And so again, the Europeans, they have to have a serious conversation with themselves. How much are they willing to bear the brunt of lack of Russia's energy supply that basically powers a lot of their grid? So that's a conversation they have to, that they've got to have with themselves. Are the European folks ready for the kind of potential suffering that may come about if the sanctions that they levy on Russia is biting? So they all have to have that conversation and figure out what is the best way forward.
And that's a conversation not just for Europe, but for the world. What more can be done, especially because of globalization? Thank you so much for talking to us. International Affairs Analyst, Dr. Kenfi Liberty.
Thanks for having me.